Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Stephanie Cox. A new children's book aims to train young minds in critical thinking. Written by a clinical psychologist, the illustrated book, Let's Be Critical Thinkers, has a wide array of high-profile endorsements, and last week it sold out on Amazon on its very first day on the platform. Joining us now is the book's author, Dr. Shannon Kroner. Good to have you with us, Doctor. The book references pandemic policies, which impacted reading-age children very much. How important is it to teach children critical thinking today?
Oh, it's extremely important. I mean, children, they need to know how to think critically about the world around them, especially with so much propaganda that we're faced with every day. And children need to feel empowered enough to be able to speak up and, have thoughts of their own and ask questions and not feel shamed or bullied into being smaller or keeping their thoughts to themselves. And, we need to really teach children to be free thinkers.
And there has been a battle over policies relating to critical theory in higher education and even in workplaces today. How do you see the state of critical thinking throughout the education system and even among the broader population?
Well, unfortunately, children are not being taught critical thinking in school. They're being taught to, memorize this rote memorization. This is how things are. This is what you need to know, and really not to ask questions. There is no real debate anymore in school. And we saw this throughout the pandemic with, everybody kind of just falling in line, put on your mask, get your mandated vaccine, stay 6 feet apart. Those who really kind of just followed in line didn't ask questions. They didn't think about, this 6-foot rule. It was so arbitrary. Why would germs stop at 6 feet? And so, I used the pandemic policies that we were all inundated with and put that into a book to teach children, one, to never let it happen again, because we really can never let something like that, those lockdowns, children who were removed from school for so long, and we can't allow that to ever happen again. But two, children need to know, how to ask questions, what questions to ask, how to spot propaganda, what propaganda is, and really importantly, they need to know what informed consent is, because we saw zero informed consent throughout the pandemic.
And with such an impactful experience throughout the pandemic on so many children, I'm sure there are parents out there really wondering how to instill these values and this capacity of critical thinking in their children. How does this book approach the teaching of those skills?
So the main character, it is a children's book and it's beautifully illustrated. And the main character, her name is Darlene Data, and she really kind of shows the reader what questions to ask in approaching the world around them. And she also takes kind of picks apart all these different policies. She does the research and really asks the questions to the reader. She doesn't say, masks work or masks don't work. She shows the research in a very child-friendly way and then asks the reader, do you think that masks worked based on this research? And I've also included some really cute and fun activities in the back of the book. I think it's really important for children to know how to do their own research. We live in a world today where, now we have AI at our fingertips. So many more children are using AI to complete school assignments. And they're losing that critical thought. They're losing that imagination. Children are becoming intellectually lazy. And so I've included these activities in the back of the book to help children really kind of on their journey in research. And so they can do their research using these activities on really anything. It doesn't need to be related to the pandemic, but I've given them a great outline to then make photocopies of and use on their own.
Yeah, such an interesting point there. I mean, AI is having, the studies are bearing this out, of course, that kids are really being impacted, and their thinking, perhaps long term, may even be impacted in their ability to think critically. But it's also affecting the workforce even today. Just this last week, we heard of major workforce layoffs, including at Amazon and UPS, and those partially impacted by AI. How much do you think this could impact the future employment landscape for children, this AI phenomenon?
Well, I believe it's a very slippery slope. And, right now we're seeing that the more use of AI, the less people are thinking on their own. AI is kind of taking over. It's like you said, it's taking over a lot of jobs. I have children of my own. I tell them all the time, you're going to have to figure out what kind of job you want in the future that AI cannot replace. But when it comes to actual thinking and children within school, if they're given a research paper to do, they don't need to even put any critical thought into that anymore. All they have to do is, type in what the topic is. They can say, I'm a 8th grader who, is doing a research paper on such and such. Write it as if you are an 8th grader and give me the resources. And now, a child doesn't need to do any thinking into what their paper is. They've got a beautiful paper. It's written from the perspective of an 8th grader. They have all their resources. They've never even had to figure out how to find resources, and they can turn that in and get an A+, and they haven't learned anything. And so I think it's very scary, the future of AI, but it's also really impacting critical thought in today's world.
Well, critical thinking, of course, has been a fixation of humankind since the ancients, but maintaining that thread of wisdom through teaching the youth today is such an important thing to do. Where can people find your book, Let's Be Critical Thinkers?
So the book is on any major book-selling website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many others. And it just came out last week. And like you said earlier, is that it did sell out on the first week, but books are now back in stock.
Great to hear. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Shannon Kroner. Good to speak with you.
Thank you so much.